Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys hanging with me a little bit for the video today. And guys, today we're going to be talking about the resurgence of the chatterbait and the bladed jig. I don't know if you guys have been following it, but over the past year or so, the bladed jig has been able to keep up with the cheater box in some tournaments. Obviously, forward-facing sonar is still destroying the sport and dominating the tournaments, unbelievable. But when the right conditions line up, we've seen some tournaments get won with the bladed jig here recently. Takahiro just won the recent MLF Bass Pro Tour on Lake Hartwell with it. He finished second in the Red Crest, the Table Rock on it. It's been able to hold its own. And I want to talk about why this bait continues to produce so much. It's been around for 20 years. What is it that makes the chatterbait a bait that can actually win tournaments? I'm going to also give you guys some tips and advice on some things that's worked for me. Everybody's got their little tips and tricks with a bladed jig. I've got mine too, so I'm going to share some of those with you guys in today's episode. And also, guys, I will put my bladed jig link in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. If you guys would like to stock up on some bladed jigs and trailers, I'll have both of those links in there. Using that link, guys, is a great way to support the channel. If you guys buy some chatterbaits or bladed jig, channel gets a small percentage of the profit on the commission on it. So it's a great way to support the channel and get you some baits as well. And also, guys, quick reminder, anybody interested in booking a private on-the-water lesson with me, just go to my Facebook page, Intuitive Angling with Randy Blaukat. Shoot me a private message. Fishing's really good here on Table Rock and Stockton Lake right now where I do my lessons, so hope to hear from you guys there. Okay, guys, bladed jig, man, it's been around forever. It's done well forever, but what's happened with the bladed jig, and I try to analyze all this, people have figured out that the bladed jig is extremely versatile. When the bait first came out, and really when it was even super popular, like the first 10 years it was out, it was primarily relegated to a lure that you fish over vegetation. It was a grass bait. I mean, the very first tournament that ever got one on it was in grass on Lake Okeechobee. Brett Height, who is probably arguably the best bladed jig fisherman in the world, he did very well in some of the lakes that had aquatic hydrilla and milfoil in it. So it sort of got the label and the stigma as a grass bait. People didn't use it around hard cover like rock and wood, but people have figured out, specifically over the past 5 years or so, that this bait catches them anywhere. And that is the thing that makes a chatterbait unique to any other lure category. Let's say that you're going down just a rocky bank that's got, maybe some logs on it or grass or docks or whatever, and you're throwing a spinnerbait, a crankbait, a buzzbait, pitching and flipping, whatever. You can do the same thing with the bladed jig. I mean, it's no different than like throwing it around targets with a spinnerbait. And when people started figuring out how to manipulate that bait around shallow targets, that's when they started dominating with it. And another thing about a bladed jig, it works in a wide range of conditions and water clarity and temperatures. It works basically anytime that water temperature is over about 45 degrees. I don't care if it's 45 or 100, you can catch them on a bladed jig. You can catch them on bladed jig in muddy water. You can catch them on it in clear water. There was some tournaments won at Lake Mead on it, which is crystal clear. So it's one of those baits that catches them in a lot of different conditions. Sunny skies, cloudy skies, whatever. Most lure categories are very situational and conditional. In other words, you have to have the right combination of wind and water clarity and water temperature line up for certain baits to work. But not so with the chatterbait or the bladed jig. It's extremely versatile. And then on top of that, you got a lot of color options. So you can have something that resembles a shad like this, or you can make a green and chartreuse one and resemble a perch. You can put brown and orange and resemble a crawdad. You can do black and blue. You can experiment with different blade colors. It's just a super, super versatile bait. So I think that's one of the reasons why it catches a lot of fish, but ultimately it's the fact that the vibration from this blade appeals to bass. And that's one of the things about bass that we don't understand is there's strike triggers in a lure, and most of those strike triggers are caused by vibration, water displacement, lure profile, lure color. And there's something about the way that a bladed jig comes through the water. It's subtle, yet it also throbs. Bass just really, really like it a lot. So here's some tips and advice I'll give you guys, just some things that's worked for me. First of all, colors. I catch a lot of fish when the water temperature's in the 50s on a brown and orange. A brown skirt with some orange in it with some type of a green pumpkin trailer. That's sort of my, go-to when the water's in the 50s. When the water is in the 60s and 70s, I like a shad pattern because a lot of times, especially when that water gets about 70, the shad spawn, catch a lot of fish on a shad pattern in the 60s and 70s. And when that water gets warm in the summer, like over 75, 80 degrees, I go to a perch pattern, some type of a green pumpkin with chartreuse, maybe a little orange in it, something that will resemble a bluegill because they're feeding on bluegill in shallow water. Those color selections have really helped me a lot. So anyway, on top of the color selections, another thing that's going to help you out with it is like your speed or retrieve. And I've got to take one quick break. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, sorry about that. What I was talking about, another thing that's a critical factor with chatterbait fishing is your speed or retrieve and the cadence of your retrieve and how you actually, bring the lure in terms of water clarity, water temperature, how deep you're fishing, what the fish want to do. Now, there's three primary types of retrieves that you want to use on a chatterbait. One is just a slow rolling stop and go. You don't really want to ever just like throw a chatterbait out there and just reel it in straight. You can catch fish doing that, but it's not going to be as near productive as you cast it out there and you slow roll it and you stop it and start it again, like it's sort of a half turn. But I usually reel it for 3 or 4 cranks and then stop, 3 or 4 cranks and stop. Just gets it coming. You don't just want it just coming through the water like that uniform. You want it coming through the water, maybe fall a little bit, coming through the water, fall a little bit like that. And the retrieve on it, as far as slow rolling, it has to do with the bank angle because most of the time on a bladed jig, I like to keep it closer to the bottom unless I'm coming past some type of a target. But like if I'm fishing down the rocky bank, I want to sort of keep it down that slope of the bank, whatever that may be. But that's the number one retrieve. The next retrieve that you can use, which I've caught a ton of fish on this, excuse me, especially around grass, is the pump and retrieve, where you actually throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and just pump your rod tip like that, let it go down, pump it up like that. So you let the chatterbait go to the bottom, you pump it up 2 or 3 feet, let it go back down, pump it up like that. Now that's really good in some type of a grass retrieve. The burn and retrieve can also be good. If you're fishing around very shallow water, like less than 3 foot of water, especially over the top of some super shallow grass, or maybe around edge of a dock or something like that, keeping your rod tip high and burning that chatterbait and keeping it just under the surface like that, almost like burning a spinnerbait. So that type of retrieve is not the same as just a consistent retrieve where you start to just, reel it, slow and uniform down deep. You're creating that reaction strike by burning it fast through the surface like that. So that's another good thing to remember. Another little tip about chatterbait I'll give you guys is setting the hook on a chatterbait. You do not want to set the hook on a chatterbait. One of the things that I learned about it early on, because I lost a lot of fish, is like when you're reeling that chatterbait, especially if you haven't had a bite for a while, it's like you feel that thing vibrating and vibrating and vibrating, and boom, one hits it like that. And especially if you haven't caught one for a while, instinctually you'll just jerk back hard like that. You lose a ton of fish with that because the chatterbait, fish need to actually eat it a little bit. So what you have to do is you have to be anticipating the strike at all the times. And when you're casting it out there and you're reeling it in, be prepared for that strike. And when you feel the strike like that, just keep reeling and just reel faster. That's all you have to do. And I learned this from watching, again, Brett Height, who's one of the best chatterbait anglers of all time out there. I got studying his tournament, clips that he did good in tournaments and won on it. And first thing I noticed with it, guys, he'd throw it out there and I wouldn't even know he had a fish on. He'd be reeling that chatterbait, then he'd just reel faster like that. And he wouldn't say anything. His rod would just bend over and he'd had one on. That gives it just that split second of hesitation to get that bait a little bit deeper in its mouth. So that's really an important factor there. And most of the time I use 17 to 20 pound test Seaguar and Vizix line. You do want to use some type of a longer, medium tipped rod. You don't want like a heavy action rod. I use that Megabass launcher, which has got sort of a medium action tip and it's 7 feet 11 inches long. I just really like that rod a lot here, but don't use too stiff a rod. You're gonna lose a lot of fish with, if you're using that stiff rod with it. But anyway, guys, that's just a few basic good chatterbait tips. I am really surprised at that bait. I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't think that a chatterbait at any time would be as versatile and dominant as it is in 2026. I thought when the thing first came out, it sort of was going to be like a whopper plopper, where it was sort of a flash in the pan and going to be extremely situational. And once in a while, somebody catch them on a chatterbait. But guys, there's people that make a living on it. There's some guys that don't use forward-facing sonar, that they put this thing in their hand and do not take it out. They fish it everywhere they go. And, you know, when things line up right, they catch them really good on it. So, anyway, guys, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.